Hello and welcome to the Underhive. We are back with some more How to Command the Death Guard. We're carrying on our thought experiment here for the 7th and final plague company, Mortarion's Chosen Sons, giving them a suggested glow up. Of course, this isn't a real change to the game or anything, but just a thought experiment as to how we could glow them up and perhaps bring them all in line so that they're all a reasonable pick over each other, rather than relying on the same few for every game if you're looking to have a competitive game. And also to bring them up to a similar power level, ideally, to the likes of the Votann that I believe are released at a particularly high power level. But again, I don't expect this will actually come to pass. It's just for a bit of fun. So let's dive in and take a look at the 7th Plague Company. Starting off here with the Stratagem Plague Brewers. Use this stratagem in the shooting phase when a Mortarion's Chosen Sons unit from your army is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, Plague Belchers, Plague Spurt Gauntlets, and Plague Spewers models in that unit are equipped with have a damage characteristic of 2. I feel like there should be some better punctuation there because it doesn't actually read like that as written to me, but fine. What they mean is the models that have those weapons, they now have a damage characteristic of 2. So your best value in terms of number of shots you can make with that upgraded damage is on the Death Shroud if you've got a wide squad, because of course they all have a Plague Spurt Gauntlet. Otherwise, you can have a few Spewers and Belchers in a squad, but besides that, it's really only going to be a few models. So you're going to get 2d6 or maybe 3d6 worth of shots. Otherwise, on a squad of 5 Death Shroud, you would have 6d6 worth of shots. However, they're only at strength 3, wouldn't have any AP. So into the sort of elite unit that you're going to want to bring down with that extra damage, being only strength 3 and having no AP means the Death Shroud don't really benefit that much from it. But, you know, let's say 5 shots get through, dealing 10 damage instead of 5 is still very nice. But of course, there's a lot of -1 damage out there. I know the Death Guard have it, so we can't complain. But again, being a lot of -1 damage out there on the units that you might be looking to take out means that this stratagem isn't always relevant, even if you've built your list to actually make use of it. For me, I think just to change it up, I think we can make it a stronger effect, but less widespread. So I think overall, this probably isn't any stronger, but it is more usable. So you can select one Mortarion's Chosen Sons unit. You select one model in that unit with a ranged plague weapon. So it doesn't have to be specifically those weapons. Any ranged plague weapon. It gains an additional 6-inch range, an additional AP, and an additional damage for this phase. So it's not going to, work on the back end or whatever. It's not going to work for the rest of the turn. You can't then use it to Overwatch. It's just this shooting phase. So your best case scenario out of that is probably the likes of the Blightspawn. So you'd be taking that up to 18-inch range, AP4, flat 3 damage, but it's only D6 auto hits. It's not, and you're probably going to be able to re-roll that if you take Viscous Death, but it's not a world-ending weapon like we're talking about with the railgun on the Votann. It's a strong weapon at that point, but you've paid for the model to bring it. You've paid additional points for being able to re-roll. You've probably paid a CP for a relic on that model anyway, and you're paying a CP now to give it that buff just for this one shooting phase, and you are still relying on that D6 coming up Millhouse to be able to actually get a good number of shots through. Otherwise, it doesn't work particularly well on the vehicles, because if you are going for the spitters on the drone, it's only going to affect one of them, so you're not, cheesing a double sprayer there. For the likes of a Plague Burst Crawler, you might do it to get a better damage output and a bit better AP out of line of sight, very similarly to how you would with the Disgusting Force ability, but that dishes out some mortal wounds nearby, rather than refunding some AP that you would lose from the barrage rule. So I think having that there, whilst it does compete with Disgusting Force a little bit alongside a Plague Burst Crawler, it stands to reason for me that if your Plague company specialises in the Plague weapons, you should realistically be able to pick which plague weapon you want it to work on. You might even want to put a blight launcher up for 2 shots to strength 7, AP 3, flat damage 3. And again, I don't think that's broken for 1 CP because it's only 2 shots. If anything, it might be a little bit on the weak side there, but I think it's at least usable. So again, I don't find, well, my experience with the Plague Brewers stratagem as is that whenever I use it, I roll incredibly hot and really get the value out of it. But I know that that isn't the way that it's going to work on average. And on average, it just doesn't seem to do enough as it is. Nurgle's Fruit. So as far as the description here, strange lumps that form on the victim. I'm going to start that again. The strange lumps that form on the victims of Nurgle's Fruit, also known as boil blight, lump and splatter, or crawling pustulence, are easy to spot at a distance for the Death Guard. Now, that just to me doesn't make any sense, because if they're in contagion range, they're not at a distance, they're at a 9-inch range. So if a bolter's effective range is 24-inch in a war zone, half of that distance isn't that far. So the way that they've worded this suggests that it's some long-range ability, which it really isn't if it's a contagion ability. It's about being up close. But the enemy unit that is in range doesn't receive the benefits of cover against that attack. Now, it is nice to ignore cover when the opponent's in cover, but it's only going to affect the opponent some of the time, and just otherwise doesn't feel like you get enough here. So I think for me, given that it is reliant on them being in contagion range, and that's quite difficult in the early part of the game, and that's when shooting is at its strongest before the lines have met, before the melee units can really bring their power to bear, the shooting units want to blow them off the board so that they're not a threat by the time they get up close. So I think in order to sort of replicate that, I would go with +1 to hit on the affected enemy, and +1 to charges targeting the affected enemy. Because again, yes, the Death Guard can shoot stuff, but they want to get up close to affect them with that contagion. They still want to get up close after they've affected them with the contagion. Even as far back as when they were the Dusk Raiders, the Death Guard have always done the same thing. Yes, they will bombard with blight weapons, with noxious chemicals, with chemical warfare, but they still have that stoic advance. They're going to come up to you, they're going to fight you in the trenches, and they're going to batter you in close range combat. So for me, I feel like the emphasis shouldn't really be on the shooting, but rather on the target acquisition and allocation. And I think +1 to hit against that enemy unit, we could even just make it +1 to hit at range, but also +1 to charges. It's not something Death Guard get a lot of access to. It's not going to be able to stack anyway. And I think a +1 to a charge doesn't suddenly make a unit feel really fast. A +2, I think, would be excessive. But I think the fact that this Nurgle's Fruit is glowing and attracting the attention of the nearby Death Guard means, yeah, +1 to hit, bit more reasonable because we know exactly where you are, and we want to get in and smash those juicy fruits for the power of Nurgle. If I can get my words out, I'm absolutely stuttering it today. So yeah, I think that feels a bit more relevant, a bit more usable, and actually not that strong because they've still got to be in contagion range. There are many armies out there that can get a +1 to hit far more easily than getting close range anyway. Bear in mind, your Contagions of Nurgle is naturally only going to be up to 9-inch. You can make it up to a 12 with a spell, but that's still pretty close for what is otherwise a slow army anyway. And lastly, we've got Vomitrix. So this is a plague sprayer weapon. So this can only go on the Blight Spore. But given how strong Revolting Stench Vats is, I've just never seen Vomitrix taken other than for a laugh. I've used it once or twice myself for a laugh, but it just feels like it makes the Blightspawn a liability. Yeah, he's going to get 7 shots, but I'd rather have you not be able to fight my dudes first and be able to hit you first if I can. It's a Plague Sprayer weapon, can only go on the Foul Blightspawn. It has 12-inch range, Assault 7, Strength 7, AP 3, Damage 2. And because it's a relic, you're not going to be able to do the Viscous Death. You don't need to reroll because it is just flat 7 hits. But taking that Strength up to Strength 8 is very valuable in a lot of matchups. So being stuck at Strength 7 is another reason why I just don't particularly like it. But again, it automatically hits because it's a Flamer type weapon being the Sprayer. So I would scrap that altogether, given that there's a relic there for the Blightspawn that the Blightspawn loves taking and we love taking with it. I don't think we need another one. So I'd keep the name. I'd keep the name Vomitrix. I like that. But we'd make this into a Relic Narthesium. Given that the Mortarion's Chosen Sons are renowned for their plague brewing, and that otherwise that would be detrimental to the health of anyone else, but not necessarily for the Death Guard, because of course they're bolstered by the vectors of the diseases that Nurgle has put upon them. I think we make this 1 CP, give the Plague Doctor the revive. Once per turn, you can revive a model to a unit that is below its full strength with full runes remaining. So we don't get flat 3 heal or anything like that. They don't become a chief apothecary because they've not paid the extra points like a Space Marine would. But 1 CP, only available in the 7th Plague Company, gives you a reason to take the 7th Plague Company so you can have that revive. It also gives you a reason to take a Plague Surgeon, which otherwise is a bit of a lackluster pick. I got one and painted one up recently to use, and then when I used it, I was like, didn't really need it. Yeah, the odd 6-up feel no pain coming in was all right, but typically your opponent will just try and kill a model, and then go, right, that's good enough. I'm probably not going to kill another one with the shooting I have left. I'll not bother because you'll just heal it back up. So as it stands, the Plague Surgeon, I think, needs a reason to get back into the fray, and I think something like that would be a far more relevant relic to have than the likes of Vomitrix, which just simply gets overshadowed and actually is weaker in a lot of ways than the base Plague Sprayer with Viscous Death for just an extra 5 points. So that's everything for the Plague Company glow-ups. Hope you've enjoyed that bit of a thought experiment. I appreciate none of that is ever going to come to pass, but you never know. Maybe in 10th edition, they might do something like that, but I can't imagine that GW will be taking their insights from me, sadly. But it is what it is. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time in the Underhive.